You are about to listen to a free portion of The Young Turks. To podcast the complete show, sign up for membership at tytnetwork.com/membership.
Ben and Elliot back on The Young Turks. We've dispensed with Jeb Bush, who has dispensed with himself, and warned you of the enormous dangers of Donald Trump. Now the dangers of Ted Cruz. Mostly, it's that it turns out that Donald Trump is correct. Ted Cruz is a giant liar. And he's got liars working for him. Yep. And he's scheming, and his father is nuts, which wouldn't all by itself be reason enough to dismiss someone. Obviously, his father's not running for president. But clearly, Ted Cruz has made it very clear that his father's faith and his father's role in his life is very significant. So you can't just dismiss Ted Cruz's father, because Ted Cruz keeps talking about his father, who keeps traveling the country and preaching very scary, nonsensical things. But first, let's get to the lying part of Ted Cruz. And again, this wasn't Cruz himself, but it is a dismissiveness with truth, which at least people should be aware of. Again, for a guy who has cloaked himself as the moral candidate. But I guess that doesn't apply here. So what has he already done? He already lied about Ben Carson leaving the race and told people they had to vote for Ben Carson. What was the other thing he did before this one? There was another good one. What did he lie about? JR, what did he lie about? JR Jackson.
What calls?
Can't hear you.
You can hear me now?
It is my giza.
Through the speakers.
Well, can you hear me? I assume it's happening now, right? It doesn't matter.
All right, never mind. JR probably has the answer, but we can't hear. So here's what happened yesterday. So on Sunday, Ted Cruz is campaigning, I think in Pennsylvania, but he's campaigning, and he and Marco Rubio are staying at the same hotel. And there's a YouTube video that went up on Matthew Misbani's YouTube channel, whoever that is, but good for Matthew Misbani. So he puts up this video, and it was posted by the University of Pennsylvania student newspaper, the Daily Pennsylvania. And the great thing about the story is you see Marco Rubio, and clearly the morning, walk behind Ted Cruz's dad, Raphael Cruz, and a staffer for Ted Cruz, who looks suspiciously like Ted Cruz. Apparently that's who Ted Cruz hires, people who look like Ted Cruz. And the staffer is reading a book, and Marco Rubio makes a comment on it. Here's the video as posted, and pay attention to what the book is. Here's the video as posted at the Daily Pennsylvanian, later retweeted by the Cruz campaign.
I wouldn't write that. Yes, sir. Especially now. This is a lot. Why are we being
Okay, so the book, of course, was the Bible, right? Then Rick Tyler, who I believe is the national spokesman for the Cruz campaign, put up a tweet from the Daily Pennsylvanian that had the video, and the tweet said this: "Watch Marco Rubio's awkward remark about the book a Cruz staffer was reading in the hotel lobby. What book was it?" Right? And of course, it's the Bible, and so we're to believe from the Cruz campaign that Marco Rubio, in a room filled with people, would walk past Ted Cruz's father and a Cruz staffer who was reading the Bible, and his young son. Rubio is walking, if you saw in the video, with his son, see the Bible with his son and go, yeah, not what was the quote there? Not many answers in it. Especially that one. Like, the Bible has no answers in it, but your particular version of the Bible is a particular shitty one. So, obviously, then we also now have what we now believe to be the more accurate depiction of what that conversation was, or more accurate translation of what that conversation was. Obviously, it was hard to hear, but here is what Marco Rubio actually said.
I wouldn't write that. Yes, sir. Especially now. This is a lot.
Oh.
So it's actually the opposite. Yeah. The exact opposite. All the answers in it, as opposed to not many.
None of the answers.
None of the answers. But he actually said all the answers, because of course that's what he said. Because Marco Rubio is at least a moderately skilled politician.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, nobody on any. Bernie Sanders doesn't go, ugh, drivel. the Bible, right? I mean, and so the Cruz campaign has now come out and apologized. Rick Tyler says, I want to apologize to Senator Marco Rubio for posting an inaccurate story about him earlier. The story showed a video of the senator walking past a Ted Cruz staffer seated in the lobby of the hotel reading his Bible. Isn't there campaign stuff these guys have to work on? I would be so angry at a campaign staffer on a campaign day in the morning reading the Bible. Like, read the Philadelphia Inquirer, be on your phone, find me out some information.
Yes.
I mean, we've already heard these stories about the Cruz campaign. You know, they're micro-targeting voters.
Sure.
Right? Do that. Micro-target. Read the Bible.
You need to find inspiration.
Rick Tyler goes on. The story misquoted a remark the senator made to a staffer. I assumed wrongly the story was correct. According to the Cruz staffer, the senator made a friendly and appropriate remark. So that's how long the research took, is they found Ted Cruz Jr. and said, did Marco Rubio say that there are no answers in that? And he went, no, he said all the answers are there. They were like, oh, that's a shame. So again, he's apologized to Ben Carson, and now he's had to apologize to Marco Rubio for this.
Yes.
Is it revealing in any way? Obviously, Ted Cruz had nothing to do with this. I'm certain he's too busy.
Right. It's revealing, I think, because I think Ted Cruz has a bit of an evangelical problem, because all of the early states tend to be weighted very heavily in favor of evangelicals, and yet if you look at the South Carolina, he won in terms of non-evangelicals. He won only 13% of the South Carolina vote, which puts him behind Trump, Rubio, and Kasich. And in contrast to Iowa,
what percentage in Iowa?
13% of this is non-evangelicals.
Non-evangelicals,
right, in South Carolina. However, at the same time, his support within the evangelical base within South Carolina was notably down in Iowa. So he has, and it's more split. I mean, he's lost a lot to Trump.
Yeah, Trump and Rubio, and Rubio got some also in South Carolina.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's got a little bit of an evangelical problem because, as we know, that is his base, and as we also know that those early states tend to favor evangelicals again, which is just it's such a strange situation to me to coming in and seeing this. These are the states. These are the electorate, necessarily non-representative individuals or non-representative states that decide the fate of all of these people. But that's the system. But he has a very big problem, and I think this is part of that. I wouldn't be so naive to think that this is not part of that whole debunking or an attempt to debunk Rubio's evangelical Christian credentials.
Oh, that's definitely what it is. They seized it, they saw an opportunity, and they didn't bother checking it because they're not interested in facts about anything. You know, these are people who tell you not. By the way, it is, campaigns read newspapers, and they read whatever the equivalent of a newspaper is now. They're on Twitter with the news sources, because that's how you do your day. That's how you react to the news cycle and try and control the news cycle. But these guys have been telling us, the Republicans, the right wing, let's leave it at that, the far right in general, which is dominating the Republican Party, has been telling Americans for 32 years not to read. Don't listen to academics. Don't listen to reporters. They're all lying to you. Everybody's lying to you. So a guy actually working to try and get Ted Cruz elected to the presidency wakes up in the morning, has his coffee, and reads the Bible. It's nonsense. It's freaking nonsense. Read it in your freaking room, Ted Jr. So, but again, and we saw Raphael Cruz, Ted's father in that video. So David Corn has a really good story in Mother Jones. And the story relates something that Ted's father said, that Raphael said at the end of last year. But it bears repeating here because David Corn wrote about it today, and I hadn't heard it, and it's a really good story. So here's the story, according to Raphael Cruz, of how the Cruz family, Ted and Heidi and the kids and the campaign all decided that, yes, the time was right for Ted Cruz to run for president of the United States. And this is the beginning of Graphic 9. Okay, so my son Ted and his family spent 6 months in prayer, seeking God's will for this decision. Again, this is Raphael Cruz. But the day the final green light came on, the whole family was together. It was a Sunday. We were all at his church, it goes on. I'm going to keep rolling through this. We were all at his church, First Baptist Church in Houston, including his senior staff. After the church service, we gathered at the pastor's office. We were on our knees for 2 hours. Come back to me for a quick second. You were on your knees for 2 hours. For the love of God, that can't be what God has in mind. It can't be. I'm not a religious person. It won't sound like it in this segment. I respect religious people. This is nuts. Okay. They were on their knees for 2 hours, seeking God's will. At the end of that time, a word came through his wife, Heidi, and the word came just saying, this is what Heidi heard, seek God's face, not God's hand. And I'll tell you, Raphael Cruz continues, it was as if there was a cloud of the Holy Spirit filling that place. Some of us were weeping, and Ted just looked up and said, Lord, here am I. Use me. I surrender to you.
Wow.
Whatever you want. And he felt that was a green light to move forward.
Wow.
I never understand religious people. Maybe, no. I don't understand religious, sorry, I do understand religious people. I don't understand direct religious reading of text. And I never understand stuff like this. And the word came just saying, seek God's face, not God's hand. Mm. And he thinks that means run for president. Like, I don't know. What
is that like? I don't know. Isn't there a piece of toast that's got the face of Jesus on it or something? Is that what that is? I don't know.
But how would hearing seek God's face, not God's hand mean run for president? Like, am I missing something obvious?
No. You're right. I don't know what that means either. I don't know how that is. I don't know how that is a message. Why he has to be so cryptic? God's always very cryptic, isn't he? He's never clear. When he comes down with his pronouncements, he never just said, Ted, run for president. He has to, it's sort of smoke and mirrors. It's like a parlor game.
Ted, you were the one. That's enough.
That'll do. That's clear, unequivocal. That'll do.
Clear enough.
That'll do. Right. I mean, it's a big decision I'm making here.
It is your time. Also clear enough. Right, I can see that. But seek God's hand, not God's hand. Don't get it.
It's always so cryptic. I don't know what that swelling of that noise was. I think they were just getting hungry. On my knees.
Raphael's knees.
Yes, his knees. He's been on his knees for 2 hours.
Yeah, for the love of
poor old boy.
Yeah. All right, so real quick, one other thing from this piece. So the piece talks about how Raphael Cruz is an advocate of Christian dominionism, holds that fundamentalist Christians should take over, as David Corn says, just about everything. And his views, Corn continues, this is the next graphic, what are we calling this? Graphic 10. Those views tend to be rather harsh. He has referred, it says here, to the theory of evolution as a diabolical plot mounted by Marxists. Quote, the number one tool for communism to destroy religion, to destroy the concept of God. Evolution, Raphael Cruz has claimed, is one of the most effective tools to impose communism. Continuing, he has repeatedly said same-sex marriage is a satanic scheme, noting in a talk to a Republican group in 2013 that homosexual marriage has nothing to do with, quote, homosexual rights. Of course not. It has to do with the destruction of the traditional family, so there is no loyalty to the family. Loyalty is to the government. Loyalty is your God, he says.
Government is your God. Yeah, government is your God. I do love it when evangelicals or Christians, it's love thy neighbor. Bible very clearly, love thy neighbor. Unless thy neighbor happens to be thy gay neighbor, in which case thy gay neighbor is an abomination and it's a communist plot. And I mean, it unravels so rapidly.
Then love thy neighbor across the street.
Yeah.
Right, a different neighbor.
Turn thy cheek.
And just because I may not have done it quite justice, but Corn doesn't. In most instances, he says, it would be unfair to judge a politician based on a relative's pronouncements. But for years, in his Senate race and in the campaign, Ted Cruz has used his father to round up support from Tea Partiers, social conservatives, and evangelical leaders. The son naturally speaks lovingly of his father, given that Cruz is seeking the presidency by courting the religious right and offering himself as a moral and a godly candidate who shares the faith of evangelical voters, and given that he frequently quotes his father on the campaign trail to urge people to vote by God's values, a voter can likely gain some understanding of Ted Cruz's world and perhaps his worldview by examining the statements and professed beliefs of the father, and they are extreme. That's David Corn.
Yeah. Again, we had a president who prayed. We had a president who was very religious and sought God's divine intervention and took counsel from God. How is this any different? I mean, how is this any different from we look in the Middle East and say, these theocracies, and they take their divine, it's just a different God, but it's the same extreme view. It's just couched in terms that we're not as familiar with. So somehow we excuse it because how is it part of God's... And let me ask another question. If he doesn't gain the presidency, which he's almost certainly he won't, does that mean that he was wrong, or God changed his mind, or he misinterpreted the cryptic message?
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, and I will say that I get it that the similarities, obviously, to the theocracies that we're so critical of in the Middle East is relevant. I would say that they're more extreme, obviously, and that there's violence involved there. But to those who criticize us for not being progressive enough because of our lack of willingness to criticize Islam, I would simply say that if there were a devout Islamic candidate who actually did want to impose Sharia law on the United States and talked like this, believe me, we would be hostile to him. I don't know whether that's occurred to you people, but they don't have that here, and they aren't here, so we don't talk about it as much. But I guess that's difficult for you guys to deal with. Okay, real quick, last story of the day before we get to the second hour, because we promised it. And it's a twofold story because it's going to begin by defending John Kasich and then criticizing John Kasich. But the defense of him is real and will be robust because a video started circulating today on social media of Kasich on the campaign trail. I believe he was in Northern Virginia. And he made a remark about a time that he seemed to be referring to nostalgically, maybe even recently, when women came out of the kitchens to campaign for him. And that included a remark from an audience member that while she was supporting him, she didn't really like that. So it's a 22-second video, and it seemed to show that it was, again, John Kasich being hostile to the idea of working women. Here's the video as it was circulating on social media today.
How did I get elected? I didn't have anybody for me. We just got an army of people who, and many women who left their kitchens to go out and go door to door and to put yard signs up for me all the way.
First off, I want to say your comment earlier about the women came out of the kitchen to support you. I'll come to support you, but I won't be coming out of the kitchen.
I got you.
So there was plenty of reaction to it. It was not positive for the most part. And then we learned that really was, I think, a terribly unfair representation of what John Kasich had actually said. Here is the part that was edited out when they got out of what Kasich was saying and then edited to the question. Here's what Kasich said next. Gives it much more proper context.
How did I get elected? I didn't have anybody for me. We just got an army of people who, and many women who left their kitchens to go out and go door to door and to put yard signs up for me all the way back when, things were different. Now you call homes and everybody's out working, but at that time, early days, it was an army of the women that really helped me to get elected to the state senate.
That's a completely different thing that he said.
Right.
Now, I mean, not super artful, and probably could have used, now thankfully women work if they want to, and but his point was not. He was just saying, hey, he was attempting to appeal to women by saying, hey, man, I had a lot of women stop what they were doing at a time when women didn't work and come out. Now women work. I don't know. By itself is not does not mean you're hostile to women.
Right. And there's just a sort of thematically, we seem to have been, again, it's an edited video that we're talking about today. Right. And again, it's South Carolina is often, I know we've moved on from South Carolina, but is often the kind of the nadir in terms of fair play. And anything goes, and so maybe this is mild by comparison, but it is disingenuous and mendacious, to say the very least, and horribly misrepresentative of his views. Now that's and clearly it's skewed to paint him in a very unfavourable, unsavoury light. That having been said, his views, and we're going to come on to this, I know, but his views on He's always seen as the Republican moderate, right?
Yeah, well, right, comparatively, right.
But that's what's so troubling, because comparatively, in terms of abortion, his views are moderate by comparison
to like Marco Rubio, for example, right?
Correct, because he has this exceptions, and the exceptions mark him out as a moderate. Which is just spectacular. I mean, which is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it's been a campaign where our focus on Donald Trump and the insane things that he has said, including what he said today, for a long time made Ted Cruz seem palatable. just again because of the nature way we talk about things. Well, he's a senator, and he's not yelling at the top, he's not insulting people, and he's not saying that we should throw all Muslims out of the country in the way Donald Trump is, so he must be okay, whereas Ted Cruz is every bit as...
I find Ted Cruz far more troubling than I find Donald Trump.
So do I.
Because he means what he says. Donald Trump half the time is a blowhard that will say whatever it is to pull focus. He plays the media beautifully. Well, I don't mean that to advocate any of his views, but he plays it like a Stradivarius, and he will say whatever it takes to pull that focus.
Right.
And he doesn't. He dials back, and his tactic has been throughout this campaign: say something really outrageous and then dial it back and say, "Well, no, you kind of misunderstood what I meant. When I said I want to exclude all Muslims, I meant we should really vet them." And he kind of distances himself from a very outrageous policy decision. I can't believe that half of these things that he really says he either believes, has any intention of trying to action or execute. If he were,
we don't know. You're right. We don't
know. But Ted Cruz is stone cold sober when he says the types of things that he says. He wants to eviscerate and carpet bomb whole swathes of Syria and Iraq. I have no doubt that is 100% what he wants to do.
I think you're right. I just think that nonetheless, the way the thing gets covered, the extreme nature of those first Trump statements have the effect of moderating everyone else, even though it's madness.
Undoubtedly.
And it somewhat applies here to Kasich, because here's the story. Elliot's going to tell you more in a moment, but this is the story that came out today. I don't know, you probably can't see it, but it says moderate John Kasich just defunded Planned Parenthood in Ohio. So while we defend Kasich here for a video about women that was misrepresentative of what he said, this is a guy who yesterday, Sunday, as we knew he was going to do, defunded Planned Parenthood in Ohio.
Yeah, and since becoming governor in 2010, he has signed every measure restricting abortion that has come across his desk. And it comes back to, again, you ask yourself the question why, and it comes back to as we know, but it bears just thinking about. It comes back to abortion, and it comes back to the 3% of abortions. Or sorry, I'll start again. 97% of what Planned Parenthood does is about women's health. There is 3% of what they do is abortion, and it gets bundled in together. And as a result, seemingly no right-thinking Republican, and I'd say that with air quotes, no right-thinking Republican could ever advocate Planned Parenthood for those reasons. That's right. So ignoring all of that. So he has systematically, in spite of, just to pick up on what you were saying, in spite of his more measured tone, since becoming, this goes back in 2011, he signed a law banning abortion after 20 weeks. In 2013, his budget included a long list of anti-abortion measures. So it has been systematic, and he has done it very, very quietly. And he has been able to, he pivots when asked and when quizzed on it. He has pivoted. When he gets into Super Tuesday states, he's going to find it less easy to pivot in that way, because they want their kind of anti-abortionists loud and proud. They don't like the kind of that moderate. It doesn't play well in some of those states. They need to be more militant. But for now, he's quietly signing these bills and has a very aggressive stance.
That's all true. That's right. For example, by the way, in this most recent budget, $1.3 million in state grants, Planned Parenthood, now stated to lose, was allocated toward horrible things like HIV testing, cancer screenings, and programs that help prevent domestic violence and infant mortality. So because of a total unwillingness to separate abortion from everything else that Planned Parenthood does, because the name Planned Parenthood is noxious to right-wing primary voters, the allegedly moderate John Kasich has stripped over $1.25 million that would have gone toward HIV testing, cancer screenings, and prevention of domestic violence and infant mortality. That is only a moderate when your comparison is Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz.
Right.
Otherwise, you are seriously conservative. But again, because he is a man who is clearly likes being governor and is interested at times in governing, unlike Ted Cruz, unlike Marco Rubio, unlike Donald Trump, I'm fairly certain, who just simply want to not do things unless it's militarily, in which case they're very eager to do things. John Kasich at least likes governing, and that makes him stand out, that if you merely had to pick one of these guys to win, it's an interesting question. We got to go. We have like a minute left. But would you take if John Kasich had a much better chance of winning, and I think he would in a general election than any of these guys, would you risk it that he has a better chance of winning? But you know that, of course, if he did win, he would be a less crazy, literal governor, not governor, but one who governs. And Cenk's answer was clear. It was, no, I'd take Kasich because it's actually it's too important to risk. Like, you can't have Cruz. You can't have it.
Right.
You can't have it. It's too dangerous. I'd take the chance that Kasich is more likely to win and would rather he be the nominee.
But he would be more likely to win versus a...
Yeah, he'd be more likely to beat Clinton or Sanders than anybody else in a general election because he's not an insane person.
Right.
But then you're more likely to have a Republican.
Right.
But he's not crazy. So it's a fun, it's a fun question.
It's a hypothesis, right.
Last thing I'll say, very last thing I'll say in the show before we bring on Hannah Cranston for hour 2 of the program is that I total wild speculation. Donald Trump has not criticized John Kasich. And as far as I know, Kasich has not substantially criticized Trump. And Kasich's remaining in the race is obvious. The longer he stays in the race, hoping to get to March 15th, which is Ohio, the worse it is for Rubio, who is obviously Trump feels his most significant challenger. Since, as you just said, if Ted Cruz can't win in South Carolina, that's where a state built for Ted Cruz to win, and he didn't win. If Marco Rubio is Trump's biggest challenger, Kasich staying in the race unquestionably hurts Rubio. The moment John Kasich drops out of the race, the moment Donald Trump has this nomination sewed up, we learn that they've made a deal, and he didn't criticize him, and Donald Trump names John Kasich as running mate. Would be an effort, don't know if it would work, to satisfy all those moderate Republicans and plenty of establishment Republicans who aren't moderate, who are like, can't have Trump, but here's a grown-up, real governor in a state that matters, in a swing state that matters. I feel like there's some possibility they've made some secret deal.
Wow.
Anyway, I got nothing. I haven't read it, nothing, except I know I did read how important Kasich is to Trump, and that will become apparent as soon as Kasich drops out.
In terms of just politically with a small p, in terms of lack of coalescence, or whatever the word is, cohesion, should we say, around a single alternative.
Yeah, and Kasich would inevitably give Trump some credibility. Kasich is an attractive vice presidential candidate for whomever. That's obvious. That's not news.
Right.
But particularly so for Trump, and I find it interesting that Trump has not criticized. Anyway.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Hannah Cranston, Ben Banquist. What is this? I'm back for the more important second hour. So we have an update for you from Ben in a second, but we also have some great stories in this hour, including Kesha versus Dr. Luke. I know you guys want to know all about it. And where does Laura come out on this? Or the Cassadines? Okay, now that is an old joke.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like went right over my head.
Okay, have you even heard of a thing called General Hospital?
Yeah, I didn't know what you
think
meant.
I've heard of that.
Do you know Luke and Laura? Does that mean anything to you?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
You didn't know, can I tell what you didn't? It was just interesting. It has nothing to do with you, but it's about phrases that come
Let's
and
do
go.
a whole show of what Hannah doesn't know.
Oh, good.
Oh, that's fun.
I don't think we have enough time.
Oh, zinger.
Ben, I'm so nice to you.
No, I'm kidding. No, but you didn't know the phrase where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
Well, that's funny you should say that, because later in the hour, we have a story about rubbers.
That's right.
Well, yeah,
very
that's how it came
unfortunate.
up.
That's how it came up. That's
Okay.
because that's why we were looking for. But that has nothing to do with you. That's generational. That phrase is no longer used, relevant.
Do the kids ever call condoms rubbers? Or no?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
do.
You suggested a name but Hannah suggested a name for a condom that I had never heard.
Oh, there's like 7 in the story that I found
Yeah.
fascinating. Can't wait to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's lesbians who have been aggrieved. Should they have gotten a trigger warning? We'll talk about it. Okay, but I realized, Hannah, before we go on to an important update and all these stories, that you don't have a nickname, and that is fairly egregious. Okay, you also don't have a nickname because you're a snob about it.
That's right.
Right? And I aim to fix both things.
My name is Benjamin. You can call me Ben. Feel free.
But I was thinking, speaking of old school references, Barbara, because it kind of feels tough like Barbarian, but it's Hanna-Barbera, which is also cute. Also have no idea what that is, right?
Nope.
Okay, yep, that's cartoons. Okay, old school cartoons like Yogi the Bear and whatever. I was about to say Yogi Berra. Another reference you wouldn't know. Sorry, it's an old school baseball player, that guy. Anyway.
This is a fun show already.
I know, right? Then I was thinking Heisenberg. Because Cranston.
Cranston,
Bryan
yeah.
Cranston, Heisenberg,
It's okay. Plus Berg also.
Well,
You know, right?
wasn't going in that direction, but okay. Okay, Heisenberg a little cooler, right?
Yeah, it's a little cooler, definitely.
Then Hanna-Barbera? Yeah.
A little bit. Well, maybe like throughout the show, people can tweet some suggestions as well. Like that was a good one.
Okay,
but
all right.
we want to also like see if other people.
That's right. Hashtag TYT Lives. Tweet some suggestions for nicknames for Hannah Cranston. And wasn't there some Woody Allen movie with Hannah in the title? Hannah something?
Hannah and her sisters.
Yeah.
Hannah and her sisters. Her sisters. No, that's a terrible name. Okay. By the way, February 23rd, that's tomorrow, Democratic Town Hall and the Nevada Caucus for the Republicans. So we're going to do both of those. And we're going to start at 5 o'clock Eastern. I won't be on the show tomorrow, but I will be here for the caucus coverage, and I will be here for the town hall coverage. And Thursday, we've got another GOP debate. That's at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Saturday, South Carolina primary for the Democrats. Drums, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders. Who's going to win? That's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern.
I wonder.
Well, okay. Probably Hillary Clinton. But we'll see as the polling goes throughout the week. Okay, now finally, Hannah, what do you got? First,
No.
I should say, update, Ben. Mank to tank.
Nope. Not going to read it.
I like that.
A mank is acceptable. That's many of my relatives called that, but that we don't tank it up.
Okay, all right.
Ted Cruz's communications director, Rick Tyler, we had earlier brought you the story that Tyler had apologized for essentially retweeting a viral video that was going around that indicated that Marco Rubio saw a Ted Cruz staffer reading a Bible and said, not any answers in there, especially that one. And then it turned out what he said was, all the answers in there, especially that one. So only the complete opposite. And though the Cruz campaign didn't put out the video, Rick Tyler, who had been a Newt Gingrich spokesperson, did retweet it. He apologized. We read you the apology. But today, moments before Rick Tyler went on MSNBC with Kate Snow, he got up out of his chair and left because Ted Cruz had just fired him. So Rick Tyler, Cruz spokesman, out of a job, technically asked to resign and not fired. Cruz saying that our campaign, I'm paraphrasing, will operate under the highest standards of integrity. And even if the video had been true, which it's not, we're not the kind of campaign to go around questioning another candidate's faith.
Because Donald Trump has done that to Ted Cruz, so that's part of the reason they didn't want to talk about that. And technically, he has suspended his job.
He has suspended his job.
Ted Cruz campaign. And look, Ted Cruz is known for dirty tricks, but this is the problem when you work for someone as dirty as Ted Cruz. You're going to find yourself on the underside of a bus at some point. Because after you do enough dirty tricks, he's got to blame someone else. So in this case, he's like, wasn't me. Oh, he did that? You know, that doesn't explain the 3 other dirty tricks you did earlier in the campaigns.
Well, did you see
which were completely sanctioned. So now he fires this guy to make a scapegoat out of it.
Did you see that he was supposed to have a quick meeting with Ben Carson, I think either Saturday before the primary, South Carolina primary for the Republicans, or maybe it was Friday night. But they went into a utility closet together, Carson and Cruz. It was supposed to be for 3 minutes. Well, it was for 25 minutes.
A utility closet?
Yeah,
what is that? Like with like electrical wires and stuff?
I think like where they keep the, like a janitor's closet.
Could you imagine if they had sex?
That would be great. I imagine that it was supposed to be a 3-minute thing and it went 25 minutes because Ben Carson napped. And then
Ted's like, come on, Ben, did you die? Did he die?
Ben, we're running a campaign. Can we just get this talk over? I'm super sorry. Okay. 25 minutes in a closet together.
That is incredibly strange. There's only one reason I've gone in a closet with someone, and it wasn't to apologize. Okay, anyways, we move forward. Now, Hannah, what do you got?
Kind of a serious story. A little switch up. On Saturday night, 45-year-old Jason Brian Dalton went on a shooting spree, killing 6 people senselessly and randomly in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Now, authorities have charged Dalton on Monday with 6 counts of murder, 2 counts of assault with intent to commit murder, and 8 firearms charges. For 5 hours on Saturday, police say the shooter drove from one target to another, gunning down victims at random. And in between the shootings, he apparently picked up passengers for Uber. Now, before we kind of get into the timeline of all of this, some people have come out saying that they were some of his Uber passengers, claiming that he was driving completely erratically, hitting other cars as he drove, running stop signs and things like that. Now, this all started around 5:42 p.m. when he shot a woman in front of her children at an apartment complex parking lot. The woman was struck multiple times, but is expected to survive. 4 hours later, the gunman killed a father and son at a car dealership, and minutes afterward, he drove to a Cracker Barrel restaurant and opened fire in the parking lot, killing 4 women and wounding a 14-year-old girl. Now, 2 of the 3 shootings have been caught on camera, and details of this are still developing, but as far as we know, there's no current connection between the gunman and his victims. And 2 hours after the final shooting, police arrested Dalton without incident in downtown Kalamazoo, and the judge has denied him bail. Currently he's in custody, and apparently he's cooperating with the police investigation. But obviously this is extremely terrifying and a huge, huge tragedy. His victims age and range from 14 to 74.
Yeah, the 14-year-old girl was originally reported as among the dead, and the only good news out of this is that as of last night, first she was actually still alive, and she's still alive now. Mm-hmm. They say holding on, grievously wounded, holding on, but responding to verbal commands. So that could be a small
silver lining,
a great silver lining, but she's clearly not out of the woods in any way.
So there's a lot of talk of Uber in regards to this. It's definitely strange that obviously the whole thing is enormously strange, horrific, etc. That he kept picking people up for Uber. The passengers were worried about his erratic driving. They should be thrilled that they weren't one of the victims. I mean, what a lucky break. What a horribly unlucky break that you have this guy as your driver. What a lucky break that he chooses not to kill you, but kill the other people around, right?
Well, in fact, what's something really interesting, one of the passengers that got into his Uber said that he took an Uber instead of walking because he heard there was a killer on the loose. And he said, "Oh, you're not the killer," like joking around with him. And the guy's like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "You sure?" Like joking around.
Oops, yeah.
Yeah, and he is so lucky.
Yeah. So, but I don't want people to get distracted by that. The problem in this story isn't Uber.
Right.
Okay, he could have been a taxi driver. He could have been a random dude driving around in his own car.
He did
want to ban Uber.
He did pass the background check for Uber, just so you guys know. Yeah.
The real problem in this story, as you guys all know, but some of you, probably half of you, will deny anyway, is guns. Right. Mm-hmm. So now, no, guns don't kill people. Yes, they do. Yes. Guns kill people. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to kill things. Deer, very, very, very rarely. And human beings oftentimes, okay? So now, mine and guns are safe. Yeah, okay, I know. You're wonderful. Everybody out there who's got guns are wonderful human beings, except it turns out all the time there's mass shooting after mass shooting because it turns out in a country of over 300 million people, there's a lot of crazy folks. And when you put crazy people plus 300 million guns, between 250 million and 300 million guns in the country, you know what you're going to get? Murder. You're going to get tons and tons of murder. And in terms of what terrorizes us, all this talk in the debates of ISIS this and ISIS that, there's one shooting that happened recently in San Bernardino. They did not coordinate with ISIS. They said, yeah, I guess, sure, ISIS. But they're fundamentalist Muslims. So ISIS or otherwise, those are radical Muslims, etc. Terrible. There was a Fort Hood shooting many, many years ago, etc. You can find these cases, and they're horrible and horrific and yada, yada. This happens more than once a day in America. In 2015, mass shootings, that's 4 people being shot in one incident, happened more than once a day. There's 365 days, obviously, more than 365 shootings. So this happens everywhere, and we've said it 1,000 times, and it'll happen in your neck of the woods. It will. Don't get surprised. We're past the days of being surprised. Oh, my God, I can't believe it. A guy I knew, somebody I knew either was the victim or was the guy who did it. Yeah, it's going to be someone you know because it's happening every day all across the country. This is the real terrorism. It is an enormously small chance that some ideological radical, and here we'll put the right-wing radicals in that mix too, the abortion provider killers, etc. It's very unlikely that someone I know is going to get killed in a situation like that, or a Muslim radical, or whoever it is, right? But from some random dude shooting it, well, that's much more likely. I'm afraid that my family could get hurt going to a movie theater, going to school, going to wherever by a random shooter like this, because we have decided to arm everyone in the country. And a certain percentage, and sorry for being un-PC with this term, a certain percentage of people are crazy. And what do we decide as a society? Screw it. Give them guns anyway. What could go wrong? This can go wrong.
Yeah, that's right. And it'll happen again. It may have already happened again. I'm pleased that this guy is alive. I think every time that, you hope you'll learn something, right? Something about him, about his psyche, about whatever his madness was. He told police that he did take people's lives after he was read his rights and told that he could remain silent. So they got the right guy, presuming the police aren't making it up. And, I don't know whether we learn anything, but we never learn anything when we kill him. So I guess that's good.
Yeah, maybe we get some information out of him as to why he did this, how he did it, so that perhaps we could prevent it in the future. But I know we could prevent it in the future.
Right.
Much, much, much harder gun control, okay? 1,000 times tighter than what it is now. Instead of, I don't know, oh, look, there's a gun, right? Almost any crazy person in the country right now could at some point go, oh, look, there's a gun. Hey, it's my aunt's gun. It's my uncle's gun. It's my gun. I went to Walmart, got a gun.
And whatever it is, unless it's like a long-range rifle, I mean, it's the handguns, look, from the moment they were designed, they're designed to kill people. I mean, you could say that they're designed to protect yourself, but they're designed to protect yourself by killing people. And that's what they're there for. That's what they do, and they do it well. I don't know, do we have what kind of gun he used? Do we know?
Yes, I do somewhere in this pack, but I want to go into something really interesting. So he was known as a gun.
He had a semi-automatic pistol.
Okay.
So one more quick thing before we go to Hannah. Look, knives are designed to do several things. Spread butter, cut bread, and it could kill people, right? Cars are designed to largely drive around, but they could kill people in a very rare circumstance.
They do.
Well, often, actually, it's not even that rare because of accidents, right? But very rarely will you run someone over on purpose, right? They're not designed to be weapons. They're designed for a completely different purpose, right? Guns are designed to kill things, beings, and oftentimes human beings, especially in the case of handguns. So you can't say like, well, we can't outlaw it. How am I going to get to the grocery store? How am I going to put butter on my bread? No, the whole point is the gun is designed to kill people, and you can say you love your freedom and the Second Amendment, and you don't mind all these people dying. That's fine. That's an argument, okay? What you can't claim is it doesn't kill people, because it does. These people are dead because this Jason Dalton had access to weapons that he didn't need to have access to. If he had access to knives, a lot less people would be dead.
Keep in mind, there are crazy people, again, using the un-PC term, there are crazy people all over this country without access to guns who would kill people if they had access to guns, had better access to guns. Like if it were really, if the extreme people in the pro-gun movement had their way, and we literally made everybody carry a gun, right? There's some towns that have mandated that. You actually going to give a gun to some crazy people, well, then they'll use it. They just will.
Mental.
So I was just going to say that I looked into some of his background, and so he has 2 kids. He's married. As of now, he doesn't have any history of mental illness, which is interesting. But what is really, really interesting is that according to his Facebook, he was married on February 20th, 2009. The shooting was on February 20th, and so it would have been the 7-year anniversary. So I have no idea what motive or what have motivated him that day, but there are some interesting facts that are slowly coming out about this case.
It is interesting that when we can't figure out why he did it, he doesn't appear to be a right-winger or a left-winger or have any political or religious, radical Muslim, radical Christian, any of those kind of things, for the moment being that we know of. We immediately assume he's crazy. But the reality is the radical Christians and the radical Muslims are also crazy that do the shootings. Not all radical's bad enough, right?
Right.
But I'm saying the ones who actually do the shootings, of course, they're also crazy. They're just using their religion or their politics as an excuse to do the shooting. In this case, we just can't, at this point, we don't know what specifically, for the word, but triggered him, this outburst from him that led to so many people dying. But I do know that it would have been a hell of a lot harder to do, and a lot less people would have died if he didn't have access to weaponry specifically designed to kill people.
Right.
All right, let's move forward.
After a judge ruled on Friday that Kesha could not be released from her contract with Dr. Luke during her sexual and physical abuse trial against the producer, many of the biggest names in music have come out in support of her on Twitter as well as financially. Now, as you might remember, Kesha first sued Dr. Luke in California in October in 2014, accusing him of using drugs and alcohol to commit sexual assault against her while wielding his power over her career to keep her silent. Now, rallying behind the hashtag Free Kesha social media campaign, female musicians including Lady Gaga, Lorde, Miley Cyrus, Fiona Apple, Ariana Grande, and Kelly Clarkson, both Miley Cyrus and Kelly Clarkson have songs with Dr. Luke, have voiced support in recent days for Kesha. Further, Taylor Swift said that she would donate $250,000 to Kesha to help with any of her financial needs during this trying time. Now, as I mentioned, the outpouring on Twitter came after a judge in state Supreme Court in Manhattan ruled on Friday that Kesha could not be released from her recording contract with Dr. Luke and Sony Music Entertainment while the case plays out. Now, a lawyer for Kesha argued that her career is at a standstill because of Kesha's refusal to record with Dr. Luke. Her contract with Dr. Luke's publishing company requires that he produce at least 6 songs on each of her albums. Now, a lawyer for Dr. Luke said Kesha is already free to record and release music without working with Dr. Luke as a producer if she doesn't want to. Any claim that she isn't free is a myth. Now, I want to clarify this last comment. So she is allowed to release music without Dr. Luke, but it wouldn't be under Sony's name, so that would obviously prevent her from, having better publicity and things like that. So this is clearly financially inhibiting her quite a bit.
Okay, so obviously a serious story, some serious allegations, but nonetheless, I'm going to start goofy, of course. So Dr. Luke is not a cool name. So I know that it is an effort to be cool because there's doctor in front of it, like Dr. Dre and stuff. Dr. Luke makes me think of General Hospital. So already we're off on a bad footing.
It's not a bad name if you're a dermatologist.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, I'm going to see Dr. Luke. Good for you. He's great at
clearing up that thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like, oh man, that guy's so badass. Dr. Fred, Dr. Luke, not buying it. Okay.
Yo, Dr. Kyle's producing my album, man.
So hip.
Yeah. This part.
Yes,
Ben, very nicely done. Furthermore, I don't know why all these years Kesha has been posing as Sam Shocker to host Pop Trigger for us. But now I have found out, if I can see her picture again, I mean, how is she, I don't know. That's Sam Shocker from Pop Trigger.
I mean,
they both have blonde hair.
They're tall, they have that lean face.
Sam is Kesha looks like she hasn't slept in some time.
I mean, Sam is a more attractive, sorry, Kesha, no disrespect, who slept every once in a while. Okay, so anyways, now on to the serious stuff. Now, look, this is tough to adjudicate in the press, right? I know we make judgments on stuff like this all the time, but we got to figure out who's right, who's wrong. Just because someone accuses someone of a horrible thing, in this case, sexually, physically, verbally, and emotionally abusing her, doesn't mean she's right. She never went to court on this. There's no criminal charges, etc. Now, so how are we to know? Well, a lot of people who work with Dr. Luke apparently are on her side, including a lot of female artists. To me, Kelly Clarkson was pretty, not determinative, that's too strong, but it was a strong indication that perhaps Kesha might be telling the truth here, because Kelly Clarkson's work with Dr. Luke actually produced one of her biggest hits. Yeah. Right? And she came out and was like, I don't want to say anything bad about anybody, so I won't say anything at all about Dr. Luke. That means he's that kind of guy, right? So now that doesn't mean he's that kind of guy and innuendo puts you in jail. But that's not the conversation we're having here. The conversation is, should she be forced into, doing her musical recordings with this guy who has done what she claims are terrible things in the past, and a lot of people are on her side on that, right?
Right.
Now, the judge says it is a valid contract. It was, thoroughly negotiated. It's not like, oh, golly gee, I didn't know what I was doing. I entered into a contract. So it's not an easy case in that regard either. But it appears that almost all the artists at this point are on one side saying, let her go. let her go. Let her do whatever she's going to do.
I just feel like there are other ways. If all she wanted was to get out of a contract, like there are other ways to do that than to claim something this big. Do you know what I mean? Like I think that this is, from the support that she's getting from people who have had interactions with him. Obviously, any woman who claims this, I am inclined to believe until proven otherwise. And frankly, and this is obviously no judgment on the case or just more on his character, is I used to be a hostess at a restaurant. And we had a lot of celebrity clientele, and he came in once and was the biggest douchebag I've ever encountered in my entire life. He was like, came in, demanded a table for 10 people, like during our biggest hour. I was like, sorry, we're totally...
Doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. And he just like walked right in the restaurant, sat down, started pulling chairs from other tables, like total. And like Jeremy Piven was a frequent client who's like known as being a total douchebag, and Dr. Luke way surpassed him.
Mm-hmm. And a person that feels...
I like the idea of Jeremy Piven watching this video and be like,
how did I get thrown under a bus here? Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. So a person that feels that entitled to everything might feel entitled to other things. I know it's, look, it's just one anecdote. And when we say we have a certain opinion on something, that doesn't mean we think anybody should go to jail over it. If if there are proceedings for that, whether it's criminal charges, civil charges, etc. We're just expressing an opinion based on the evidence that we have in public here.
By the way, coming in and taking over and pulling chairs and making your own table, it's such a Dr. Luke move, of course, like, let's leave the facts of the assault of any alleged assault, because we just don't know, right? And yes, it is incredibly unlikely. It's not impossible that desperation could get you to make that move if you can't try to get out of the contract other ways. Like, it's not like it's never happened, but I'm with you. I'm inclined to believe anybody who would put themselves through this with the preponderance, with our doubt, with us doubting that she would make it up, Sony needs to step up. And there's some indication in the story that they might, because Dr. Luke isn't more powerful than Sony. And Sony doesn't have to fire him. They don't have to, but they have the ability to make everybody whole and take a little bit of a loss in the process. Or keep her under contract and say, we're going to keep you under contract, but you're working with Dr. Kyle. He's awesome. You go work with somebody else. But Sony could step in and say, no, we're letting you go. We understand. Or, and investigate it first. Take a couple of weeks. Find out. But if you find out other women who substantiated, if you find out that maybe some of these other women are substantiated for another reason, or that she told people at the time, or any of the things that normal investigations do, and Sony can hire serious investigators to do this, then they find out, and then they make this deal, and they do the right thing and let her go. They can end this fight.
And if they find out that he's done it a bunch of times,
then you end him.
Right. Then I would think twice about doing a deal with that guy. And in this case, I'm actually already a little surprised that Sony would withstand this kind of really bad PR when it would have been easier to say, hey, you know what? Let's figure out a different deal here. Have somebody else produce it.
Her attorney's Mark Garagos, who's obviously is in many high-profile cases and a big-time California attorney. So the judge said you're asking the court to decimate a contract that was heavily negotiated and is typical for the industry, she said. However, Sony indicated at the hearing that the label would be open to having Kesha record outside of Dr. Luke's direct purview.
About time.
And so in an interview after the motion, Garagos said, obviously, I wanted a complete separation. This is a positive first step to get her back in the studio. So that's an indication that Sony might be making some moves here.
Yeah, and that we're headed in the right direction. Again, if I was at Sony, I would have tried to... But it gives you a sense of how powerful Dr. Luke must be in the industry. And with all those big hits that he does have, and you can't take that away, that he must have so much power inside Sony that they were willing to risk this kind of PR disaster to back him up all the way through court.
Yeah, okay, I think that's a really good point.
Now, this is a very serious story. So separate from that, I would like now, Cenk is very honest. I don't know whether you know this, Hannah. I'm going to presume that you're going to answer yes to all these questions. Obviously, you've heard of Lady Gaga, right?
Yes, correct.
1-0. Lorde?
No.
1-1. Miley Cyrus? Yes.
Come on.
2-1. Fiona Apple?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure, but I thought you might be. 3-1. Ariana Grande? or grande?
Grande. She licks donuts. Yes.
Oh, 4-1. I had no. So you beat me because Kelly Clarkson for me is yes. So I would definitely been foreign too. I don't know Lord and I don't know Ariana Grande. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, Lorde. Yeah, I've heard
Lord,
of her.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Never be royal.
No, I don't know any of their songs.
Okay. It's a girl.
Okay, and then
She's a
but I did know that.
And then
I thought
finally,
there was some chance that it was Madonna's kid.
I want
But
to
that's
top it off with Kesha.
Well, so okay. Now I'm going to prove your point. It turns out I actually have heard of all of those in one way or another. Okay, although as you can tell, not a lot of depth of knowledge here. But I'm going to prove your point that I thought for sure that Kesha and Dr. Luke were going to be black. Okay,
Right, yeah.
And it turns out, oh my God, Kesha's Sam Shocker, and Dr. Luke's a dentist.
Dr. Luke, his real name is Lukas, Lukaszz Gottwald.
Okay, so he's actually a computer programmer on Wall Street.
Yeah. You had heard of all these people, right? You know all these people.
Yes.
And you can sing their songs.
I think so. And not well.
So it's not Lorde, it's Lord.
Lord, yeah.
Okay, I know.
Can
Everybody's
you,
amused.
again, generational, I didn't know any of those people, right?
Okay.
I didn't know many of them, right? I don't know Kesha, and I don't know Ariana Grande.
Art
Grande. And I didn't know
Ariana
Lord.
Venti.
Yeah, I knew Ariana Tall. Can you name 2 Rolling Stones?
Oh, you can name one. You can name one.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. Yeah. It's so crazy.
We're going to do a post game, right? Because I'm going to put you on the spot on. Actually, in politics.
All right,
See how
fantastic.
you do.
Okay. We'll
No?
put you on the spot later.
Okay, no. Wow, isn't that amazing?
Isn't that amazing?
No,
That's
it's a
right,
theme of apparently this hour, that amazing what the different generations don't know, right? That he doesn't know Ariana Grande and Kesha and all this, and you don't know any of the Rolling Stones.
I feel like I may get more shit in this scenario for my lack of knowledge.
No, I mean, I think that people are like, what Ben and I don't know,
I'm
like, what? You thought it was Lorde? How could you not know Kesha?
The problem is
crazy?
that there is no shame in not knowing things that are new, right? And I've also embraced it. Like, I'm not proud of it, but I've embraced it. Like, that's who I am. I don't really listen to new music. You have to fight against the notion that you're a young person who doesn't appreciate history.
Right.
It's unfair. So yeah, you might get more. You might get more, but it's whatever. You listen to the music now. Like, why would you?
No. You're right about the shit she'll get, but you're wrong. Like, the shit you'll get and I'll get is, wow, you guys are super old.
Yeah,
right. Which kind of sucks. That's worse than the shit she'd get.
Yeah, because we are.
But I'm going to be written off as like a dumb millennial, similar to our next story.
All right, let's do it.